For centuries, Russia bore witness to the unwavering rule of the Romanov dynasty. Their reign, steeped in autocracy, left little room for dissent or opposition. Tsar Nicholas II, the last of the Romanov emperors, ascended to the throne in 1894, inheriting this legacy of absolute power. His belief in his divine right to rule as God's chosen representative on earth permeated every aspect of his governance. Nicholas II, however, proved ill-equipped to navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world. His reign was marked by a staunch resistance to reform and a deep-seated suspicion of any challenge to his authority. The Tsar's advisors, often chosen for their loyalty rather than their competence, reinforced his autocratic instincts. The Russian peasantry, constituting the vast majority of the population, endured a life of poverty and hardship. Bound to the land under a system of serfdom that had only been abolished in 1861, they yearned for land ownership and an escape from their impoverished existence. Meanwhile, the burgeoning industrial working class faced appalling working conditions, long hours, and meager wages in the factories of Russia's growing cities. Discontent simmered beneath the surface of Russian society, fueled by economic inequality, political oppression, and the Tsar's apparent indifference to the plight of his people. Nicholas II's autocratic rule, once a symbol of stability, had become a source of resentment and a catalyst for revolution. The Revolution of 1905, sparked by a massacre of peaceful demonstrators in St. Petersburg, known as Bloody Sunday, shook the foundations of Tsarist rule. Forced to concede to the demands of the protesters, Nicholas II reluctantly agreed to the establishment of a legislative body, the Duma. This concession, however, proved to be more symbolic than substantive. The Duma, intended to provide a voice to the Russian people, was hamstrung from the outset by a system designed to limit its power. The Tsar retained the right to dissolve the Duma at will, a prerogative he exercised repeatedly whenever the assembly dared to challenge his authority. Furthermore, the electoral system ensured that the conservative elements of Russian society maintained a disproportionate influence. Despite its limitations, the Duma provided a platform for opposition to the Tsarist regime. Social Democrats, Constitutional Democrats, cadets, and other reformist groups used the Duma to voice their demands for political change, social justice, and economic equality. However, their efforts were met with resistance and repression from the Tsar and his allies. The Tsar's unwillingness to share power and the Duma's inability to effect meaningful change only served to exacerbate the existing tensions within Russian society. The limited reforms introduced in the aftermath of the 1905 revolution proved to be too little, too late. The stage was set for a far more profound upheaval that would forever alter the course of Russian history. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 proved to be a pivotal moment in Russia's descent into revolution. Initially, the war effort was met with a surge of patriotic fervor, uniting Russians across the political spectrum. However, this initial enthusiasm quickly waned as the war dragged on, revealing the deep-seated weaknesses of the Tsarist regime. Russia's poorly equipped and ill-prepared army suffered a series of humiliating defeats at the hands of the German war machine. Millions of Russian soldiers perished on the battlefields of Eastern Europe, while millions more were wounded or taken prisoner. The war effort placed an immense strain on the already overburdened Russian economy. As the war progressed, food shortages became rampant in Russia's major cities. The transportation system, ill-equipped to handle the demands of wartime logistics, collapsed under the strain. Inflation soared, eroding the value of the ruble and pushing the cost of basic necessities beyond the reach of ordinary Russians. The Tsar's decision to assume personal command of the Russian army in 1915 proved to be a disastrous miscalculation. Leaving the Tsarina Alexandra in charge of the government in Petrograd, he further isolated himself from the realities of the situation at home. Alexandra, influenced by the mystic Grigory Rasputin, dismissed competent ministers and appointed corrupt favorites, further undermining the credibility of the Tsarist regime. By the beginning of 1917, Russia teetered on the brink of collapse. The war had shattered the economy, decimated the army, and eroded whatever popular support remained for the Tsar. In February 1917, a series of strikes and demonstrations erupted in Petrograd, triggered by bread shortages and deteriorating living conditions. The Tsar's attempts to quell the unrest with military force backfired spectacularly as soldiers, weary of war and sympathetic to the plight of the protesters, joined the rebellion. Within days, the February Revolution, as it came to be known, had swept away the Romanov dynasty and brought an end to centuries of Tsarist rule. In the aftermath of the February Revolution, a provisional government composed of liberal and moderate socialist leaders emerged to fill the power vacuum. Headed by Alexander Kerensky, a charismatic lawyer and member of the Socialist Revolutionary Party, the provisional government pledged to establish a democratic republic and address the pressing issues facing Russia. The provisional government, however, faced an insurmountable challenge: reconciling the competing demands of a deeply divided society. The workers, organized in Soviets' councils, demanded radical social and economic reforms, including worker control of factories and an end to the war. The peasants, the largest segment of Russian society, clamored for land redistribution and an end to centuries of exploitation.